Hello, and welcome back to the all. Sorry, I'm mixed up here. Welcome back to the One United podcast. There we go. Oh, it's been a while. It's been a while. It feels
It's been a hectic weekend, mate.
I'm still from it. Clearly, joined by two brilliant guests, Emery and Gaz. Brilliant to have you on, boys, especially after such a fantastic weekend. Which we'll get talking about. You know, it's not every day. Well, I suppose for United it is every day. You beat Leeds United by 4 goals, but you know, luckily we had fans in the stadium this time. So just to kick us off, Henry, what are your initial thoughts on the game?
I mean, I can't complain one bit. Genuinely can't complain. I mean, you look at Bruno, who was complaining that we conceded the goal after, and I'm just going, right now, even you're taking a piss now, Bruno. Like, come on. We shipped 1 goal against Leeds, and yeah, when you score 5, how can you not be happy? How can you not be delighted? How can you not be excited watching your rivals get absolutely stuffed by a bum team after, and you know, just witnessing greatness? I mean, again, I've said it numerous times, and I'll keep saying it again. Paul Pogba needs to sign the team. Needs to sign it now. I don't care. Part of that Premier League money, you know, that Sky are so precious on, give him $1 billion. Fuck it, just flip it in his pocket. This guy at the moment, this guy is making the league. I'm not even joking. He is making the league. Like, seriously, that performance was one of the best I've ever seen from any Premier League player. Certainly in my years on this earth, it was beyond anything I've seen before. He's a phenomenal player. He's still getting criticism from pundits, which we will discuss later in the show. I have some names I'd like to speak about, but in terms of quality, I mean, he overshadowed Bruno's. He overshadowed a hat trick from Bruno. Like, that's how good his performance was, and that is difficult to do. So nothing but positives from me. And Champions League Varane getting announced before the game had everyone creaming on their seats. So we can't complain one bit.
Steady on. Well, you know, it's nice to be back, and it's nice to have some positivity from Emery for once. It really is a collector's item, isn't it? But Gaz, I'll come to you. You were obviously there at the game. You know,
yeah.
What was that atmosphere like? Obviously, beating the rivals, announcing Varane, must have been a hell of a day.
Right. Well, I've got a couple of confessions. Yeah, I was at the game. I was still having a beer when Varane was announced.
Oh, shocking.
And I totally missed it. I didn't even realise it had happened. I just came into my seat right on kickoff. Didn't even know they'd announced Varane before the game. So yeah, totally put that one up.
These tourists at Old Trafford drinking beer with their Arsenal sauce 15 minutes before kickoff. It's not on. You're the reason we're going downhill, Gaz. Just remember.
Well, you know what? The thing is as well, I think that's what... I probably should have got to my seat early because it was my first time being there in, fucking 2 years or something like that. But I think that's just a tradition for most people, like that go in, week out. You just end up getting in there as late as possible and as close to kickoff as possible. And yeah, I just ended up... I was still drinking that crappy Carlin that they're now serving. So, yeah, but I missed Varane. But and another thing as well, I actually have to confess. Don't get me wrong, it was very well aware how bloody well Paul Pogba was playing. That was obvious to everyone. However, when Bruno put his third in, I didn't know it was his third at the time. It was only after the game when someone went and Bruno got a hat trick. I was like, did he? didn't even clock it at the time. I was just too overwhelmed and excited about the fact that we just kept putting him in against Leeds. And you know what? The main positive for me. Everyone can talk about the performances, and don't get me wrong, every single player put in an 8 or above out of 10 performance. It was phenomenal. Players maybe not getting the credit that they deserved. I think Lindelof isn't getting the credit he deserved. Aaron Wan-Bissaka isn't quite getting the credit. Fred and McTominay aren't getting the credit. And obviously, we need to big up Paul Pogba as much as possible, because as soon as his agent comes out and says one thing, or maybe he says something slightly ado with Man United fans, people jump on him, people jump on his back, and the criticism is almost unbelievable at times. Maybe sometimes there is a little bit of truth in the criticism, but we need to praise him just as much when he does something phenomenal, like gets 4 assists in a frigging game. It's remarkable, and he was phenomenal. So Paul Pogba, man of the match for me, incredible. But what going back to what I was saying, the thing that impressed me the most was the mentality, mate, because Leeds scored a phenomenal goal. A phenomenal goal. Their fans went absolutely ballistic. Like the limbs in their end were phenomenal right after they scored, flying all over the place. Could have been very easy for momentum to carry them on in that game and keep them going, and very easy for the opposite to happen to United. Half time had just happened. The heads could have gone down a little bit, but no, we just were continually, as same as we were in the first half. We should have scored more in the first half. But that second half period right after they scored was one of my top Old Trafford memories. And to watch them Leeds fans shut up was frigging brilliant, mate.
It's quality. It was quality. Well, we'll approach this game chronologically then. We'll start at the start. I was going to talk about the Varane announcement, expecting you to be there, but since you're such a massive letdown, that plan's just sort of gone out the window a little bit.
Who's Varane?
Or it's Varane, as people call him, which freaks me out. How can you just not read in any way? But yeah, we'll start at kickoff. Obviously, you were in the stadium. The noise came across on TV. Obviously, I couldn't be there. I was covering a non-league game, which I'm sure everyone would much rather be doing. But yeah, what was the atmosphere actually like in the stadium? So obviously, you can only get so much from the TV, and even then, it was impressive.
Top atmosphere, mate. One of the best ones you've seen for a league game. Obviously, with it being Leeds as well, and actually having fans in. You've got people like me who don't really remember Leeds being that good. Like I was, 6 or 7 when they were last competing at the top. Obviously, not including last season. So I've been built up to this game and been told how big the rivalry is all my life. So I was really looking forward to it, and the atmosphere was just amazing. Yeah, it felt like there was just a real buzz about the place, but a real excitement. And then, as much as we don't like seeing it, I do think there was a couple of things which maybe, let's just say, enhanced the Manchester United fans' need to make some noise and the need to sort of drown out what was happening at the other end with the Leeds fans. Not like we really needed to, because the lads on the pitch were doing that for us. But yeah, it really was, mate. It was incredible, and Old Trafford was absolutely rocking. And as always, you've got a few Leeds fans saying, "Oh, Old Trafford was dead yesterday. It was quiet." And there's even a few United fans as well saying, "Oh, Leeds fans didn't make a noise all game," and stuff like that. I do feel like with Old Trafford, it depends where you sit. Like for the acoustics of the stadium, it really does. And where I sit is really low down in the corner, on the corner of the side of the Stretford end, but on the opposite to the tunnel that the players come out in. And I feel like you get a good indication there. And the away fans for the first half were making a lot of noise, and the Stretford end for the first half was making a lot of noise, and then the second half just blew up.
Happy days. Happy days. It's nice to see, isn't it? Obviously, we get branded with this sort of tourist club, and sometimes rightfully so. We do have sometimes quite a quiet stadium, but it was just so nice for it to even come across over the TV screens with the noise was just incredible. But we'll start talking about the game then, Henry. Obviously, Varane's announcement came before the game, but actually in the game, we'll start from the back. One thing that really pleasantly surprised me was Victor Lindelof's performance. Now, I'll ask you about it, but more specifically, is there a chance that Varane's arrival is having a similar effect on Lindelof as Tellez's did on Shaw? Because I've not seen that level of performance from Lindelof in at least a season, and suddenly his competition arrives and he's absolutely electric. So do you think that possibly played a factor?
I think it's played a part. I don't think it's played the biggest part, but I think it's played a part. I think there are 2 other components in terms of his game. Playing for Sweden at the Euros, they are an incredibly defensive side. They rely on clearing balls out of the box, on every couple of minutes, basically. You've got to be switched on. You've got to be, concentrated to the highest degree, especially when you're playing international football at that kind of level. So I think that was one of the main ones for me. Is his concentration levels are probably improved playing for Sweden, because you have to be more on it throughout the whole game. You can't make any mistakes. You can't let a ball through. You've got to be in constant communication. So I think that's helped. I also think him being made Sweden captain recently, that makes you feel 10 foot tall as a player. Surely, I mean, you're the captain of your country. It's one of the proudest moments ever, and he's probably thinking, you know what, I'm a pretty good player, and he's probably thinking, I've got. So he'll have known that Varane was coming in. So again, it's, do you want to take on the competition or do you want to be pushed back on the bench? And I think he's given Solskjaer a real dilemma on the weekend, and I think he's going to start again. I think Lindelof will start again. I think putting Varane in now is almost, you're not number one anymore or number one or two to Victor Lindelof. You're not part of that anymore. I think that's a bit dangerous to do when you've just got a new signing. Same as Sancho. I didn't think Dan James had a fantastic game. I think Sancho will start, but I think he gave Dan James that opportunity to prove himself, to prove that he was good enough to be in that United side, and basically say, go out and prove that you can play in this starting team. And yeah, Lindelof stepped up, and honestly, it was one of his best performances in United shirt. It really was. You can tell by the communication, the dominance in the air. I've never seen him, dominant, but he was bullying Patrick Bamford. Patrick Bumford, man, that guy's crap anyway. But I'm not gonna go into that. He's garbage. He really is garbage, and he showed it at the weekend. Scored 1 in 90 shots.
We've had 3 months off the podcast, and still Henry is relentlessly calling teams and players bums already. I love it. Don't change. Don't change.
I'm sorry. I got so annoyed when he was getting. Oh, he should be in the Euro squad. That it's honestly. Seriously, really put Naki Wells or whatever in the squad. Then might as well, Dwight Gale can go in the, ahead of Harry Kane. What kind of crap's that? Honestly, just because he gets created chances and he scores like 1 in 20 shots doesn't mean he's a good player. But yeah, in terms of Lindelof, I love him. I really do, and it shows the making of a good player when he steps up. When he was under a lot of pressure because it's like, we've got a new signing now. And multiple Champions League winner, World Cup winner, are you going to step up? And he showed every United fan that he's more than willing to do that. So
that's what we need as well, though, isn't it? It's like, I don't want to compare us to our rivals or anything here, but you look at Man City last season, they had 3 class centre halves, really. John Stones, Laporte, and Ruben Diaz, and it got to the point where Laporte wasn't happy and wasn't getting enough game time, and that might carry on into this season. But yeah, I think that the United to be in that position now where you've got Harry Maguire, Rafael Varane, and then Victor Lindelof in the side. Harry Maguire and Rafael Varane won't start every single game together. We'll be very lucky if they get to do that. Lindelof's going to be so important, and I think James, I thought you made a top point as well when you said about the competition. The competition coming in, and that's what's brought him into this form, and he might play even better now this season, like Luke Shaw did. I hope you're right, mate. And it's another masterstroke from Ollie, if so.
Yeah, obviously you don't bring Rafa Varane in the same way you brought Alex Telles in with that idea in mind. Oh, yeah. I suppose a player of his quality sort of demands a start, but if his impact can have if his sort of just persona and being there can bring the best out of Lindelof sort of as and when he plays, then it'll be a positive. Obviously, it's a lot different defending yourself against Varane than it is having the competition of Eric Bailly. No disrespect to Eric Bailly, but the levels aren't as high. But listen, we'll move across the pitch. I think Wan-Bissaka, Maguire, and Luke Shaw speak for themselves. They're consistently 8 out of 10, like they have been all last season. They will be all this season. Obviously, Wan-Bissaka maybe has a few games where he could be doing more, but the backline spoke for itself, really. Just completely understated, but still remarkable. But I want to talk about the goalkeeper because obviously I think, De Gea didn't really put a foot wrong, shot stopping wise, but there was a lot of times, especially in the first half, where Leeds were getting him in behind, exploiting the pace of Maguire and Lindelof, and they're balls that if Dean Henderson was in goal, you'd expect him to come out and clear. But if De Gea seemed to be rooted to his line, so I'll come to you first, Gaz. Are we seeing sort of the limitations of De Gea's game and why Ollie's starting to prefer Dean Henderson, or do you think De Gea's performance warranted him staying in the starting 11?
Yeah, I didn't really think too much about De Gea's performance. I don't really think he had too much to do, but it was an average performance in the sense that there was one shot that came at him, which it was in the first half, which he cleared to his left, which I thought maybe, I mean, he got it away from the danger, to be fair, but I thought at the time maybe potentially could have caught it. The first half, I had a few problems with set pieces. Set pieces were making me massively concerned. They were coming in, and it felt like you'd often have like people like Fred marking Patrick Bamford and stuff like that. And I was a little bit confused by that. Thought we did get a little bit lucky actually on a couple of them set pieces, the way that the balls sort of fell right to our defenders. But yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe if Dean Henderson was there, he would have been coming out a bit more commanding, would have cleared the attackers out the way, and would have had no need to induce that anxiety in me and the anxiety in the defenders that it potentially did cause. And, potentially against a bigger, stronger team, you have a few more problems there. But I didn't really have any problem with David De Gea's performance yesterday. However, I'm still very much of the opinion that the time is now to get Dino in as soon as he's ready. And I think that I almost imagine that was the plan if he didn't get COVID and suffered the after effects of COVID. And, I really hope he's sound, and I hope he's doing well, and I hope he can come back as strong as possible and doesn't need that period of recovery, if you like. But at the end of the day, if you're going into your season with David De Gea as your second choice goalkeeper, I'm a very, very happy man, mate. If I think you go into the season with Tom Heaton as your second choice goalkeeper, that's not even terrible.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll ask you, Henry. Obviously, you were making a few gestures and facial expressions during that discussion. I'm assuming you're of the opinion that Dean Henderson has to come in as soon as he possibly can.
Yeah, I've had worries about De Gea for a couple of years now, and this is not a me trying to point fingers or anything, but having played the position, what little things that would annoy, say, someone who used to be a defender about Maguire or Lindelof. Little things annoy me about keepers when they make little mistakes and not coming out and commanding your area. Your area isn't your box, and this is what people seem to they don't understand. Your area as a keeper is not your box. Your area is the first third of the pitch. Like that is, you should control that first third of the pitch especially as a pro goalkeeper at the top level. You should control, that whole area is yours. Forget the defenders. You should be the one talking to them, not the other way around. So, and when you got your defenders trying to call you out to get the ball, and something doesn't smell right. So, and Henderson, I know sometimes he makes little mistakes, but all keepers make mistakes. Alisson, bloody hell, he played a pass to one of the City players last year, quite literally straight to one of them. But that, as a keeper, when you're a sweeper keeper, that happens sometimes. So I think the criticism, I would be more annoyed if De Gea didn't come out than if Henderson came out and made a slight error, because he wants to come out. He wants to command his box. He wants to be, he wants to be that keeper that is the modern goalkeeper. That's the key words, a modern goalkeeper, where you can come out, you can play the ball, you can chest it down, you can have constant control of your back four in front of you, and you can be, left, right, centre, controlling every single aspect of what is in front of you, because you can see the whole pitch. And David De Gea makes me nervous. Like, genuinely makes me really nervous at times with some of his, a ball comes over the top and you're thinking it's literally in your box. Like, he should be on the edge of the box when a ball comes over the top, on the edge of the box, ready to collect it. But he's like 7 or 8 yards out, and it's like, push up. Like, seriously, he's a bag of nerves at the moment. He didn't get picked for Spain, over Unai Simon, who, by the way, fuck me, that keeper's bad. He's really bad. He was third choice, essentially third choice in that squad. That's not good. That is really not good. So I think his confidence is gone. It's shot to bits, I think. And as Gaz mentioned, on corners, you've got to claim them. We saw yesterday, Lloris had a bit of a stinker in the first 10 minutes, claimed everything, then onwards. You've got to control what's around you as a keeper, your area. because if you don't, your defenders get a bit nervy. We want to push our back line up, don't we? We want to push them up by like 10 yards, 5-10 yards with Varane there because he's a bit quicker. But they'll think, do I actually want to do that if I've got a keeper that's not willing to come out and sweep? All these little things, they play on the mind of the defenders. And if you've got any sort of hesitancy against the top side in your back line, for me, that's bad news. I think Heaton should be putting pressure on at the moment. Did well in pre-season from what I saw. Again, not the best with his feet, but pretty controlling, pretty accomplished. Play at the top level for God knows how many years. More than competitive. Henderson as well should be, when he comes back, he should nail that number 1 spot down. There should be no doubt in anyone's mind. It should be his.
I think Heaton was brought in because Lee Grant's shoulders started to hurt from lifting the boards up, so they needed someone else to do it for him. But it's a good question from Ed, and we're coming back to that sort of later in this show. We're sort of moving our way up the pitch at the minute. But speaking of which, we'll move to midfield. McFred. Personally, before the game, I was slightly worried, and then I realised Ole's an absolute genius, so there's no need to worry. I think it's a discussion we were having last night as well. I think McFred was perfect in that game. I think they matched the energy of Leeds. They controlled the game from a defensive point of view. It was very rare that Leeds broke through the middle. They would always have to go long and wide if they were ever going to get a chance. And obviously, Calvin Phillips being introduced would have changed that. I don't have any doubt about that. It wasn't the strongest Leeds team, but it's still going to be a Leeds team full of energy, and that's why McFred were perfect. I think also on the ball, they surprised me in terms of how good they were. Controlled the game from there as well, allowed United to break through the middle quite a bit. But I also don't want to see him against Southampton because it's going to be a completely different game. I think Matic and Van der Beek are going to be better there. So I'll come to you first, Gaz. What were your thoughts on McFred in the game? And do you want to see him again against Southampton? Do you think they've warranted that place?
Firstly, I don't want to see Nemanja Matic starting a game for Man United this season. I really don't understand what a man of his age or even his performances over the last couple of years does to warrant a place in this Man United side right now. He's the least dynamic midfielder that we've had, and he's lost so much of his pace from his game. Obviously, he wasn't really built on that in the first place. And this was my worry sort of when I was watching the game at the weekend, because Fred was phenomenal. And I think Fred is a player that I criticise an awful lot. And I personally would agree that United should be going out and getting a defensive midfielder now, someone to replace Fred in the team. However, if we go out and buy that defensive midfielder, we cannot buy anyone who has less energy than Fred. We cannot lose that energy from midfield, because he showed once again why it is so important. And in McTominay and Fred's best games together at United, that has always been the big thing. We've outworked the opposition's midfield. And, I'm not sure what sort of defensive midfielder we could bring in. Maybe, someone like Calvin Phillips would actually be a good shout to bring in, and it would work in that system. But at the weekend, just another tactical bit of genius, I think, from Ole, for McTominay and Fred. I think that those two are potentially his most important players in terms of the way he wants the team to play and in terms of the influence they have on the rest of the team. I know that's easy to say about centre midfielders, because naturally the whole team is going to feed off their energy, but they were so brilliant yesterday. So the quick passing at times was brilliant from McTominay as well. McTominay, man, what a game McTominay had. Honestly, for me, McTominay stays in United's best 11. Even if you go out and buy another midfielder, I think he stays in there. And even like things like putting Pogba on the left wing, that sounds mental to the majority of us. Like before last season, the idea of that is out of this world, and Ollie's made it work. And people do not give him enough credit for his tactical nuance, because to make calls like that takes bollocks, and it's come off time and time again. I'm happy. I'm happy with the midfield setup. I guess looking forward for the rest of the season, you wonder how long can you really keep that going. Maybe we do need another option in there. But I tell you what, I don't necessarily think this, but we've seen managers take players who everyone sort of ruled out and said they're never going to be that type of player. Look at what Ollie did with Luke Shaw. Look at what Pep's done with John Stones. And they revitalise them. Who knows? Maybe this season Fred could be revitalised. and he can play that defensive midfield role on his own with someone like McTominay and Pogba in front of him. Who knows, mate?
Maybe. Who knows? Who knows? Well, I'll come to you, Henry. Obviously, I'm glad you brought that question up, because I wanted to ask you sort of how do we approach the Southampton game, because I think while McTominay and Fred were brilliant against Leeds, I think it was a game that very much suited them. It was a game where there was quite a lot of space. There was no need for them to sit deep and sort of play make from there, cut the lines or anything. Their job was simply to get it to Bruno Fernandes, who was afforded all the space in the world for no reason whatsoever. So, firstly, I'll ask, were you impressed with them? I know you're not either of their biggest fans at all. But secondly, sort of bringing Pogba into that conversation a little bit, how do you set that midfield up against Southampton?
Well, this is the weird thing. And for starters, I was really impressed with both of them. It's a game where you've got to have energy. And, the midfield, I thought Pogba ran so much as well. I don't think he gets enough credit for that. He was left wing, he was right wing, he was centre. At times he was tracking back to like left back, and even tracking back to play like defensive midfield at times. Trying to tackle people in that kind of area. So I thought he was fantastic, and I thought the other two were as well. But there's one thing that I think is key from that game. And the setup is, it's normally 4-2-3-1. That's what we all associate Solskjaer with. It wasn't. It was 4-3-3, especially the second half, 4-3-3. When McTominay was on the right, Fred was in the centre, and Pogba was on the left of that three. And Bruno wasn't playing attacking midfield. He was playing as a centre forward. For a lot of that game, he was doing the. I don't like Firmino at all, but he was doing that sort of role where he dropped a little bit deeper and then he'd go and running behind. So he was causing them all kinds of problems, and I thought Pogba, he wasn't stuck on the left, which is one thing that I've had so many problems with when we put him on the left and he's been stuck on the left hand side. He doesn't track back as much as most, because he's not that kind of player. He's an attacking player. But if you put him in a three, McTominay was great driving forward. Fred held deep. Played a good role. He was busy, and Pogba was kind of driving from the left side of a three in midfield and pushing forward, and getting into pockets between CDM and centre back, and that's where he's best. Not on the left, not on the right, but a free roaming central role where he can do what the hell he wants. And I think we gave him that, and he got 4 assists. I mean, how can you complain at all? If you give someone a free role when they get 4 assists, if he can do, I'm not saying get 4 assists every game like Mr. Graham Souness, who is a gigantic knobhead. I don't think you need to get 4 assists a game as a player like him, but he had so much influence over everything that was happening. And if you're going to play him, you can play him alongside a defensive midfielder, but it's got to be in a 3. It's got to be in a 3 where you've got 3 busy players who are willing to put the tackles in, who are willing to drive forward. And that's where Fred can be useful, but he gets caught a little bit too much on the ball. When he's getting pressed a lot higher, City and Liverpool and Chelsea, I think it could come a bit unstuck in those games. I personally have been a massive advocate of Yves Bissouma. I love him to bits. I think he's a fantastic player. He also plays in a possession-based side as well in Brighton. They keep the ball a lot. They don't get enough credit for that. They're a lower side, but they keep the ball a lot. And I think that Gaz mentioned energy, and you've got to have energy in a midfield. And it's going to progress because we've got Cavani coming back. We've got Rashford coming back. Sancho's going to be in the squad. So then it comes to a case of, well, you can't play James, Fernandes, and Greenwood as a front line essentially. So you're going to have to drop Bruno a bit deeper and play a driving forward role. You're going to have to drop Pogba a bit deeper. You're going to have to put Sancho, Rashford, and Cavani, I think. And you've got to have a player in the middle that is energetic, that is busy, that wins gets interceptions, but wins duels as well against players that are bigger than him. Fred's good at that, but his passing is one thing that's a little bit. It was dodgy last season. It was better in the Leeds game, but you can't. I don't think you can rely on him to play that role. Just a little bit inside of me says you can lose the ball up in the final third, where he was playing for Brazil in the Copa America. You can lose the ball up there, but if you lose it near the edge of your box, which you did a few times last year, you got a serious problem. You can't just say, "Oh, you've got Varane, so it's all going to be fine." But I think there's a little bit of me that says go for someone like Bissouma, because you can get him for like 35 million. Now that, for me, that's a bargain, absolute bargain. And you're getting a player that plays there week in, week out, alongside. He doesn't play alongside defensive midfielders. He's playing alongside Pascal Gross, or sometimes it's Alzate in there, or Lallana. He's not playing alongside defensive midfielders. He's playing alongside players that United essentially would have in that they drive forward and they look to get assists. So, yeah, something's got to be tweaked in that side, and a defensive midfielder is critical. Like, it is critical. Get rid of Pereira and Lingard, honestly. I'll say it now. Jesse needs to do it for his own sake. And Andres Pereira, I know he scored a worldie, but he's pretty crap, really. Let's be straight with this. So I think the last piece of the puzzle, which would allow us to challenge, I'm going to say it now, challenge for the league title. The last piece of the puzzle is a defensive midfielder that is capable of running for 90 minutes and getting interceptions and allowing the team to break quickly. So that's my view.
There we go. I think you've just covered every single point we could have possibly wanted to make on that. Yeah. Can't argue with any of it. We'll move forward then. We'll move into the wide players. Obviously, Pogba could have his own entire podcast, so we'll come to him later. But I want to talk about Dan James. Now, Dan James, we know he's got his limitations on the ball. His technical ability isn't at a United level, but I think he was so important in how United played yesterday, and more important in how Leeds actually set up.
Yeah.
So I think we all saw with Leeds lineup, they wanted to press us, they wanted to push up high, they wanted to take the game to us. But then you see Daniel James in that starting 11, and you think we physically can't push up as high as we want to, otherwise we're in trouble here. So I think their desire to push high onto the halfway line conflicted with the fear of Dan James, left them in this sort of weird, confusing grey area, which meant they didn't really know whether to come or go. That left a massive, massive amount of space for Greenwood and Bruno Fernandes in the middle. You saw most of our attacks came from a ball through the middle to one of them dropping off. They'd fire it out wide. We'd make an attack from there. So I think while his performance still leaves a lot to be desired, just having Daniel James on the pitch can become such an important tool to Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. And I think while he's still young, we can build on that quality. I think I'm less opposed to the idea of keeping him now. Whereas at the end of last season, I thought he needs a loan. He can't stay here taking up a squad space. He needs to improve or get out. Whereas now I think that impact he can have on the opposition thinking, never mind our team, we've seen it firsthand. It can be incredible. So, Gaz, you were obviously there. You saw a lot of what the TV cameras didn't pick up. What did you make of his performance?
I think your analysis on him then was actually spot on. I think himself, like when he was on the ball, maybe did leave a lot to be desired. And, maybe, as always, I think with Dan James, his decision-making at times is not the greatest. I'd say it's probably one of his worst traits, actually. But just having him there is enough to instill fear in the opposition, especially when it's Leeds, a team that he's done it to before. You don't need me to tell you about his pace. We all know how remarkable he is in that respect. And I actually was never really at a point where I thought there's no point having Dan James in this team. I've always thought that he's a vital member of the squad. And, that's the integral word here, squad. So I'm not saying that Dan James should be starting every week. I'm not saying that Dan James should even be on the bench every week. There's going to be plenty of weeks where he's not even there. But I think what he gives you and what he gives to the rest of the team as well, like you say, what you're saying then, James, I think one of the men who benefited the most, or two of the men that benefited the most from Dan James, was Bruno Fernandes and Mason Greenwood, because Leeds constantly had one eye on him. And I think that was part of the reason why Bruno got as much space as he did. Pogba's pass to Greenwood for the goal to put us 2-1 up. I'm pretty sure that Dan James was making a run there, and I was off my seat going, Dan, pass to Dan. And he's given it to Greenwood. No one expected him to put it that way. No one in the crowd. And it's little things like that Dan James offers. So I think he's a vital squad player. You bring him on when you need him. You bring him on in games where, maybe you're 2-1 up and you bring Dan James on and you know that you've got a great chance of going 3-4-1 up and putting the game to bed. You've got to keep him, mate. And I don't understand the criticism he's got. We didn't sign him for a lot of money, and he's done exactly what his job is at Manchester United for me. He's never let us down.
Spot on. I'll come to you, Henry. Then I'll bring it back to Ed's question that he said earlier about Sancho. Now, Dan James was very, very good against Leeds, a team that offer you a lot of space, which Dan James thrives on. Now, I expect Southampton to deploy a much lower block, as they have done in the past. Is Southampton the game where Sancho gets his first start, or do you think he's not ready yet, and we could do a job with Dan James there? Who do you want to see start against Southampton?
Well, for starters, I got smacked clean in the face by a bit of humble pie a couple of days ago. Just
that doesn't happen very often, Emery.
Well, I'm willing to admit when I'm wrong, and I said a few weeks ago on All for United, I said I thought we should keep Jesse over Dan James, and we should loan him out and maybe bring him back. From that performance, Jesse has energy, and I like him. And the problem with me is I want him to succeed. I want him to do well for United, and it's like he's one of my favourite players, and it's quite tough to see a player go through a pretty crap time and then go out on loan and do so well. And you think, I just want you to succeed at United. That's all I want is him to do well. It's his boyhood club. But I think in terms of how much he would help the squad, we've got too many players that are like him. He's a very similar player to Bruno. I know they won't get likened, but they are very similar in the sense that they're both so energetic. They both are direct when they run, and they like to press the keeper or get him behind. And I think that Lingard wouldn't have much of a career at United, especially this season, if he stayed. So keeping James would be first priority now. Honestly, keep him in the squad. He doesn't have to be in every starting 11, but keep him in the squad. As for Southampton, I'd start Sancho. I would. And it's not, this isn't, James did well, boot him out anyway. This is the setup. Southampton used to be a possession-based side. They've changed in the last year or so, solely because they don't have the players to do it anymore. They're a selling club. They don't particularly, keep hold of their best players. Danny Ings is gone now. I mean, that was a massive shock, but he wanted out and he left. And that's their problem. Players don't want to stay there because they're a mid-table club. They want to go and try and succeed or get into Europe or whatever. So they'll sit a bit deeper. I have no doubts. And Sancho against the low block. Sancho, Bruno, Pogba against the low block. Yeah. That's honestly just do it. Please do it.
I completely agree. I think Sancho's the man. You need someone who's going to unlock a defence, and it'll be him, whether that's playing a killer ball, which he's capable of, beating three men in a very tight space, breaking into the box. That's what he's capable of. I think Dan James thrives when there's space in behind the defence, and there's not going to be an inch against Southampton.
But it's fear. It's fear. Other sides, you need other sides to be fucking terrified of you before you go out onto that pitch. And I saw on the weekend something I haven't seen with the United side for 7 or 8 years now, and that is a team coming up against you that absolutely shit themselves. They had stage fright. They were terrified. They looked at the starting lineup and went, "Yeah, I don't particularly want to come up against that." We finally, after waiting for so long, after having outright battles with the owners, it's been chaos, and we've waited for this moment where we can look at United side and go, this is what we were, what we're here to see. It's what we want to see. It's what we're happy. We're proud of the United team now. We're connected with them, and teams are going to be scared to come to Old Trafford now. Liverpool and City. You think they'll want to play us now? Absolutely not. Like 100% not. Get the last piece of the puzzle and watch those guys come to Old Trafford and absolutely shit themselves. City bottled it against Spurs. Like seriously, there was no mistake in it. They bottled it against Spurs. I know they're missing a couple of players and all their precious Kevin De Bruyne or whatever, but they bottled it, and they will not want to come to Old Trafford. No one will want to come to Old Trafford, and the fear factor is what Ferguson had for so many years, where he could play Phil Jones right wing, and you'd still not want to play against the United side. Seriously. And we've got that now where you're looking at a starting lineup with arguably, when they're fit, 3 of the top 10 forwards in the world, with Sancho and Rashford and Cavani when they're on it. I mean, seriously, it's the most exciting season so far in terms of build-up. Even under Ferguson, we're thinking, Champions League, Premier League. That was a consistent thing. This is the most exciting season for me in my lifetime, genuinely.
And also, can we just say how good it's going to be when a fully fit Marcus Rashford is back in this Man United team as well? I can't. Every single football fan at the minute, particularly United fans, maybe it's just because I'm in a United circle, but a bit like an echo chamber. It feels like everybody has just totally forgotten what Rashford was like a year ago and how good and influential Marcus Rashford can be when he's fully fit. He's been injured for so long now. I hope he can come back, and it will take him a while when he comes back to get back to full fitness and full Marcus Rashford. But when he does in this team as well, it's going to be remarkable. I think that was the only thing that was missing at the weekend. If it was Marcus Rashford instead of Dan James, it would have been an even bigger scoreline.
You've got the option, though, now. You've got the option. You've got Martial, you've got Rashford, you've got Sancho, you've got Cavani, you've got Dan James. If you want to delve into Jesse Lingard, you've got these players that can... Rashford can afford to have surgery. Like, it makes me want to cry with happiness. We can let him have surgery because we've got good enough players. We've got, Van der Beek, who didn't even get on. We've got an international player who couldn't get on the pitch. Like, seriously, this is the best in terms of depth we've had in 10 years. And it is remarkable. Like, it's so the best team since the Ronaldo, Tevez, Rooney. Honestly, I'm going to go out there and say it. It's the most frightening team we've had in a while.
And people will comment, right? People will now comment and say, "Oh, what about 2011? What about years that we got to the Champions League final? Surely they were a better side than they were now." Absolutely not. The team of Sir Alex Ferguson's last season, when he won the league title, was a team that should not have been competing for the league title. Never mind that, the fact that we won it by about 25 frigging points or something. Like, I would totally agree with that. That on paper, right now, this is probably the strongest United side since 2009, I'd say.
Yeah. The only problem is everyone else is exponentially better as well, aren't they? But I'm loving the optimism, Henry. I'm going to join you in it. I will wait, maybe, like the comment that we had earlier from Anthony said, maybe wait 10 games to see just how good we are. Because, we started 2 seasons ago with a 4-0 home win to Chelsea, and things suddenly just went down the shitter, didn't they? So I'm not getting carried away.
The squads are so different. Genuinely, they are so different. We're smart in the transfer window. Like, honestly, we are. I want to bang my head against the wall and make sure that I'm actually alive right now. We are being smart and savvy in a transfer window. We got probably the second best centre back on the planet for £34 million. Like, pinch me, punch me, knock me over. Honestly, this is just remarkable. Like, I'm just what?
Whatever you're into, mate. Whatever you're into.
I was going to say, isn't that a Missy Elliott song?
I don't know, probably.
But listen, we'll move to the next player. We'll move to the other wing. We don't need to talk about his performance. Paul Pogba. Everyone spoke about his performance. We know how good he was. I did want to get your opinion on this, though. Well, both of you. I'll come to you first, Gaz. given how sort of inconsistent he has been, how frustrating he was at points last season and in previous seasons, now that we've seen possibly a fully fit Paul Pogba come back this season, firing on all fronts, do we need to go all out to get him to sign this contract now?
I mean, I don't really know. I think as long as we've got him for this season and we can maybe plan for life without him throughout the season, then that's okay. I know it means losing him for free potentially next year, which I very much doubt Man United will let happen. But for me at the minute, I just think we need Paul Pogba for this season because we already need that defensive midfielder. And I think if you're going to lose a player like Pogba, it's something that you need to plan for. It can't be happening a few weeks before the transfer window shuts because it essentially derails your season totally. Paul Pogba during his time at United, absolutely inconsistent. That is one way to put it. At times a little bit frustrating. And but last season, I think he was so integral at times, and I don't think he got the praise he deserved last season for his performances for United. Everyone talks about Bruno Fernandes, but there was a period where Bruno Fernandes didn't show up for a few weeks, and Paul Pogba was the man who took the mantle when that happened. 2 match-winning goals. I remember one against Burnley. Was the other one against West Ham or Villa or something?
It was against Fulham, wasn't it?
Fulham, yeah.
And West Ham, and Fernandes lay off and then he put it in the top one.
Maybe I'm just getting my claret and blues mixed up there. But either way, either way, he was vital at times last season, and this season he can be that player again. Look, I've had frustrations in the past, maybe when not as much as when some people criticize what his agents have said and stuff like that in the past. I'm not really that fussed about agents because I think we're in this new world of football agents where it's not necessarily the case that the players have total control over what their agents say. I think if you think that, I think you're a little bit deluded. Like, let's just put yourself in the shoes of a footballer for once. However, when it was him himself that was saying, maybe it's time for a new challenge, I never got as angry as some fans got, but I certainly got to the point where I was like, "Oh, mate, just go then. If you don't want to be here, go." But you saw him this weekend. He looks very, very happy to be here. People call him selfish and arrogant, and he's setting up goals for Bruno. Bruno's getting him over to give him the credit for the celebration, and Pogba's not letting it happen. Pogba's pointing at the back of Bruno's shirt, saying, "This is the man. This is the man." If Pogba was so arrogant and selfish, he wouldn't be doing things like that. I think he's an important player as well for squad harmony. I think a lot of people have him down as, and maybe I did as well in the past, had him down as a leader because everyone gets on with him. That's not what a leader does. That's not what a leader's about. However, he's still so important because everyone gets on with him. He's vital for this team this season anyway. And I certainly don't think someone like Donny van de Beek is quite ready to step into the Paul Pogba role just yet at United.
Yeah, definitely. Just before I ask Henry about Pogba, I do have to ask you guys, is there someone stood outside throwing a metal bar at your window?
I'm trying to turn my microphone off all the time. There's loads of work being done outside. I don't know what's going on, but it's just clanging constantly. Sorry, guys.
Just sounds like you're getting attacked. That's all. But Henry, I'll ask you on Pogba, and I don't want an answer which goes into sort of talking about Souness, etc., because he's pretty obvious he's a racist scumbag now, and he deserves no airtime from anyone. We all know that.
Yeah, no, we don't. Careful. They are the words of James Ridge.
Yeah, this is not the opinion of Gaz or who he works for. This is the opinion.
Yeah, the One United podcast does not represent the BBC's thoughts on Graham Souness. But Henry, I'll ask you the same as Gaz. Do we need to do everything we can to sign Paul Pogba, even if it means destroying the wage structure, bowing down to his demands, etc.? Is this something that needs doing?
Yeah, I think so. And I've been really calm about this for so long now. And James, we've had conversations over the last year and a half or so, ever since we've been doing this. And my answer has, apart from one time when Raiola really did kind of overstep the mark, and I kind of was a little bit reactionary. Apart from that one time, I've always been consistent in the fact that I want to keep him. And I said last year, I'm not going to blow my own trumpet here, but I am. I said last year he would come good. I said last year he'd come good. And I said it at the start of the season when everyone's going, oh my God, he's useless. Get rid of him. He's only got a couple of years left on his deal. Whatever. Fine. Okay. Yeah. Everyone has a right to an opinion, but I said he will come good. And he was the one that kind of kept us in a little bit of a title charge last year. He was consistent. I know he got injured after that, but he was consistent. He's happy. For God's sake, you are spot on, Gaz. He's happy. I can't understand this narrative that he disrupts the changing room. Oh, he's a horrible person. He's made out to be such a martyr when everyone loves him. I've never seen anyone say a bad word about him. Not about him. Everyone goes, Ferguson didn't like him. Ferguson didn't like Raiola. Like, he said it. He said, I don't have a problem with the player. I have a problem with his scumbag agent. I think he called him a bag of shit. And, and that's so correct. I don't have a problem with him. I have a problem with his agent. But as Gaz said, you don't have control at the moment. The kind of, it's shifting. How things are working is shifting in terms of agents have more control over what happens at the moment. And that needs to be shifted back to the players. But he's happy. He's smiling. When he does interviews, he's always got a smile on his face. And he was saying, I love this team. Problem is, he's got someone in his ear telling him, I think you should move. And he's going, I bet you he's going, oh, really? Yeah, I think you should move. And Raiola's thinking, I'll get a couple million quid or whatever in my pocket. Happy days. He gets to move a player on, get a big signing bonus or whatever. But you're looking at PSG as the only possible contenders for getting him. Real Madrid, really, I don't think they'll. I mean, they can try, but I don't think they can afford his wages. But PSG, Mbappe's probably going to leave. I know they've got Messi and they've got Neymar. Boring league, not that competitive. Pogba is happy. Him and Bruno are like best mates at the moment. He's doing the talking on the pitch. He's smiling. He's not a bad person. Like he is not a bad person at all. He's a really, from what it seems, really humble, down to earth, family man. And people attack him. We know the reasons why. I'm not going to go in depth into it, but we know the reasons why people attack him. But he is a family man. He's happy in Manchester. He's got his newborn, I think probably a year old or something now, and he's playing good football. And he got 4 assists in a game, like 4. Kevin De Bruyne was being shown levels. We are talking about someone who is competing right at the top of his game, and he's still getting doubts over who he is and what he represents and how good he is as a footballer. Like, there should be no doubts anymore. He is a top footballer if you put him in the right team. And maybe a couple of years ago, people going, oh, if you want to leave, leave. Maybe he was saying he wants to leave because he's been let down by a club that have promised him the world. They promised him leagues. They promised him Champions Leagues. The only thing that has come out of it is a Europa League and an FA Cup. He wants the big trophies. He wants to be competing at the top level. And this team now is what he was promised years ago. And it's taken backlash over Super League, whatever, to get a team that he's actually going to be happy playing in. And I can't stress this enough. People saying he's let us down, he's been inconsistent, and that's fair enough. But there are reasons behind it. But if you put him in a top side with top players, with good personalities, with ambition to go and... We're talking about winning the league now. Like, when he joined, we weren't talking about winning the league. We had Pogba, Ibra, and that's it. And, you have Fellaini and Herrera in midfield next to him. And everyone's going, oh, he's just not performing. Like, let's be real. Like, he's in a good side now, and he's performing. People can connect the dots. Seriously. Put a good player in a good team, he'll thrive. Put a good player in a bad team, I mean, he can thrive, but we saw Slippy G for so many years, didn't win a Premier League, in a garbage team for most of it. It's honestly, that's how I see it. And I see it as we've let him down, not the other way around. And if he does go, it'll be such a shame because we've got 2 of the top 5 or 6 best midfielders in the world right now in our side. And if he leaves, we'll regret it in a year's time. We'll go, damn, why didn't we keep him? And everyone wanting to stay will be going, because you wanted him out. Seriously, we'll regret it. If he goes, we'll regret it 100%.
So to summarise the last 5 minutes, Henry wants Pogba to sign the contract. That's all you need to know.
Went a bit listen, right there.
Given that we're very close to the hour mark, and like Pogba, his performance speaks for itself. I think there's not too much that needs to be said about Bruno. I think there's more of a talking point around Greenwood. So I think I'll move on to that if you two are happy with that, because I thought Greenwood was phenomenal yesterday. I think there was big doubts about whether he could play that number 9 role consistently, and I think we've seen, while he's not a Cavani type of striker, he has so much to offer. The fact that he's mobile, he's got that Anthony Martial knack of knowing when to drift wide and when to stay central and open the space up for Bruno Fernandes, why he had such a good game. I think it was such an intelligent performance, and we're seeing so much development in his game other than just his finishing. There'd be a lot of times where he'd drop into that almost that sort of hole between attack and defence, pick the ball up, spray it wide, play it through to Bruno. He's just he's looking so composed on the ball from 30 yards out rather than from 5 yards out, and I think that's such a big improvement in his game. So, Gaz, are you finally starting to see just what Greenwood could be? Because in my mind, it was always, he has this potential, will he deliver on it? And I think now we're starting to see what Greenwood could really be. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, totally. That weekend was probably his best performance for me in a United shirt all round. He was absolutely remarkable, and he was also incredible at the things that you almost can't improve on sometimes as a footballer. It felt like his instincts and his decision making straight away as soon as he got the ball, his quick feet were absolutely remarkable. He knew exactly what he wanted to do every single time the ball came to his feet. That suggests maybe a shift in up here as opposed to his physicality, although he has filled out a little bit. Maybe last season, we know last season he did have a lot going on off the pitch and early on in the season as well. So that's always going to affect his season. But maybe Ole Gunnar Solskjaer has finally sort of found that level with Mason Greenwood, and they finally understand each other, and they know what each other want. But Mason Greenwood's still so young. Mason Greenwood's still a teenager. He's not going to be the finished product yet. He might have a bad game next game. You can't get on him if he does, because that performance that weekend shows exactly how much potential he has. The mantra that has been repeated by Ole, by everyone since he came into the team, was how remarkable of a finisher he is. But he's done it time and time again now from outrageous angles, and you're just so confident when he's through on goal, and he can get through on goal as well. It's not just a case of he needs that passing behind like he got from Paul Pogba. He can go round a man. He's strong now as well. You saw his physical presence in that game. He maybe didn't win every challenge that he went for, but he challenged for it. I think Greenwood has so much to offer this season, and the fact that if you actually were to put our strongest 11 down on paper, excluding injuries and everything, he maybe isn't even in the starting 11. That's just so promising for this season now, because we're talking about players like Victor Lindelof after that performance not being in United starting 11. And when you're saying that about players like Mason Greenwood as well, it shows that we've not just got a good team, we've got a really good squad. I can't wait to see Mason this season, mate. I think it's going to be a big season for him.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, listen, I'll ask you, Henry. Obviously, Gaz mentioned the word squad. It's been a word that's been banded around the whole episode, and it's becoming more and more important now. A big one of the only complaints that I heard from people yesterday is that without Cavani in the team, we sort of lost that threat in the 6-yard area with Cavani's movement and his ability to get into the box. But do you think this has actually been a masterstroke from Ole? Well, even though it looked like a panic buy last season, do you think this bringing Cavani in, was sort of part of a masterstroke where you get to this season, he's established in the team, Greenwood's a year older, they're both fighting for a place in the team. Do you think it's now we've got 2 quality strikers, and depending on the opposition, you could play either and it wouldn't make a difference. You play Cavani when you're going to have the ball in the box a lot. You play Greenwood in a game like today where you can utilise his mobility. Do you think, basically what I've said, do you think that Ole has really pulled it out of the bag here and that's a reason to be excited for the season?
Yeah, Cavani's. I mean, I criticised it at first, and again, I get you get things wrong, you get things right, and it did seem like still to me, and I will maintain this. It still seemed a bit panicky because it was really late on in the window, and I think there was a hope that maybe we'd get Haaland or something, and that didn't quite come off, and we were in contact with other people, but it's proved to be a masterstroke. You're getting someone in who's experienced, who he's playing at a better level than he did at PSG for the last few years. Like, you know, he seems like he's got the desire, he's got the players around him to perform. But you've got a case now where people next year were calling for Haaland. You know, they're saying get a DM, you know, now and then get a striker next year. I think we've got to be a little bit cautious with this because if Greenwood has a really good season now, and he's learning, by the way, he's learning off Cavani. He's learning off one of the best poachers in the world. Like he's learning, and Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. Anyone remember, you know, what he did as a
definition
career,
of a poacher, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was all he did was stand in the 6-yard box and let the ball come in and be in the right area. And you know, people would call it now a tap-in merchant. He's still a really good goal scorer. You know, you've got to be there to put the ball in the back of the net.
It's a skill, isn't it? It's a definite skill that's worthy of having, knowing where to be. And
it's an instinct. If you can get an instinct into someone's brain where you instantly know where the ball's going to come in, you've got to get, you know, front post or further back or edge, or if you can get that knack of knowing where to be, which, by the way, over the years, United have had strikers that do that all the time. You know, Van Persie, fantastic with his left foot. But again, you've got to know where to be in the box. And I've seen the comparisons between the two. And they ring true a little bit in terms of the quality of finishing and where the positioning in the box is now. So I'm thinking, have a good season this year. And we might not have to go and shell 63, million on another player. We can get a right back, or we can bolster different areas of the pitch. But I think that going and getting a striker now would hamper Greenwood's career massively. And the worry is that you stick him out on the right hand side and he ends up playing there. He's going to be second fiddle to Sancho for God knows how many years. But if you teach him to be a striker and have someone as a backup to him, you're in a good position. You're in a really good position where, we can say, have Haaland and Greenwood rotating, whatever. No team would do that. Erling Haaland would want to be number one. That's it. No one else in over him. But if you can get a player that is homegrown, finishing his finishing, I'd say, best in the league in terms of finishing. Like him and Kane, I'd say are the top two. That's a bold statement. But Greenwood, I think I counted 2 shots last season when he was playing that he missed the target. 2. Like, he does not miss the target. So I think we're looking at a potential homegrown top quality striker that we could have for the next few years. And the performance, against Leeds, he was doing it all. Hold up play, dropping deep, getting in behind, causing players all sorts of problems because you don't know where he's going to be. He's mobile, and Gaz is right. They bulked him out. They made him strong, and he's still a teenager. I think he's the second highest scoring teenager in the Premier League at his age. I mean, that just wow. We're looking at a real talent here, and we've got to make sure that we use him in the right way. And the right way, I think, going forward is as a striker, and he's learning off one of the best. Cavani will be here for 1 more year, no longer. So happy days. We're in a really good position.
What a way to sum up the entire game and to round off our analysis. Happy days at Old Trafford. But yeah, like I said, that brings an end to our analysis of the Leeds game. I think just to end the episode, I'd like to look ahead to next week against Southampton and maybe get your 2 thoughts on a predicted lineup. I think that would be quite interesting right now, given the performances and the players we have available. So we'll start from in goal. I think it's pretty much a given De Gea will start in goal, unless Henderson makes a miraculous recovery. The back line's pretty interesting. You've got your Wan-Bissaka, Maguire, Luke Shaw in undoubtedly. But the question comes, has Lindelof's performance warranted an extra week? Do we need Varane in that team as early as possible, or do you give Varane more than just a week in training to get accustomed to these players? What do you two think about that?
I think it'll be Lindelof again. I think the training point that you made there just makes the most sense, doesn't it? Lindelof can slot in there, had a good game. Why not? Varane comes in the next game. Easy as that.
Would you agree, Emery?
Yeah, I think so. And you've got to remember with a centre back partnership, you've got to be in sync as a centre back partnership in games, in Premier League games, or else you get found out, or else you'd be in a bit of trouble. And I think that building up the kind of partnership between Maguire and Varane over a period of maybe even a couple of weeks, maybe even 3, I don't know, but building that partnership that Maguire's now got with Lindelof at the moment, I think building that is going to be crucial. And Maguire and Lindelof know each other inside out. They played with each other for the last couple of years now, so it's got to be those two for me. It might be different, but my hope is that we keep it the same, because if things ain't broken, what's the point in fixing them?
Exactly. Now, so we're going with Lindelof then, I'm assuming. Lindelof in that centre-back. I suppose that there's definitely worse options to have than Victor Lindelof as your backup centre-back. Sweden's captain. Sounds quite nice as your second choice. But yeah, I'd agree with you too. I think Lindelof needs to go in, especially with the fact that Varane's moving here. We said in an interview his English isn't great. He's going to need time to bond with Maguire. You can't just throw him straight in. We'll move to the midfield too then. We'll assume he'll play the same formation as before.
Yeah.
Are we sticking with McTominay and Fred? Because in my personal opinion, I'm going to throw it out there, I'm going to go with Fred and Van der Beek. I think we need Van der Beek from deep to break down that Southampton defence. I don't think this is a game for McTominay and Fred. I think we'll if we do play them, we'll face the same frustrations we had last year. But I'm interested to get your guys' thoughts.
I mean, and I don't know what you think, Henry, but I think it'll be the same team apart from Sancho on the wing instead of Dan James.
Yeah, maybe. In terms of what we do and what Solskjaer do, I think 2 completely different things. I wouldn't go with McTominay and Fred, just because of what you're going to be coming up against. And I think that James, you're right, in Van der Beek's a smart choice. I'm not sure he'll start. I think personally, I'd go with a midfield 3 of Fred, Pogba, and Fernandes, because you're not going to defend a hell of a lot against Southampton. I wouldn't have thought. A few counter-attacks, but that's just coming from, Fred breaking up the play. So I think if you're going to have most of the ball, you've got to have as many attacking players in there as you can get.
So go on then, Henry. In this lineup then with Fred, Pogba, and Fernandes in midfield, who do you play out wide on the left? Because I don't think Martial's back to full fitness yet, and I don't think Dan James would play well against Southampton.
I would go with Martial, and my reasoning why, and this is a bit, maybe looking a bit too far forward, but Southampton's right back situation is a little bit edgy at the moment. They've got Walker Peters, and they've also just put Livramento in that team, who's a youngster, and he played on the right hand side at the weekend, and they got caught a few times by Everton. So I'm looking at that and I'm thinking you've got to have a direct player who, you don't have to have pace, loads of pace, but you've got to have someone who's direct and quick feet and willing to run at people. And I just think that Martial, it screams out. And by the way, against Southampton, Martial was somehow a specialist. I don't know why. He'll have confidence from, I know it was Van Dijk a few years ago that he sat on his arse, but he'll have confidence going there, and mentality does play a little bit of a part in, especially with him. It's 50% mentality. It really is. And I think that if you can have him looking like Thierry Henry, and he'll think he's like Thierry Henry, running at people, a bold Martial is a good Martial. And I think him running at people directly, I would just put him there. I would have to.
Fair enough. Well, listen. I think that's a good point. But I think in terms of what we think Ollie will go for, I think it's fair to assume it's going to be the same team add Sancho instead of Dan James. I think we can all pretty much agree on that. Given Ollie's reputation, anyone got any issues with that?
No, quite happy with that.
Up top. Cavani's not fit as well, is he? He's going to start training on Tuesday, and that's way too soon, especially after having a few weeks off. So give it a few weeks, and we'll see what the real United team is. But I mean, I'm already excited for the weekend, man. Come on, I just can't get over. Yeah, excited already.
Me and you both, mate. Me and you both. Well, listen, that brings us to an end of the episode. Massive thank you to you guys for joining us, and Henry, as usual, thank you for making the show today. Big role for you. But yeah, thank you to everyone who got involved. Thank you to everyone who watched. Stay tuned. We'll have an episode for you next week, all about the Southampton game, where we'll have another 5-goal thrashing for you. Touch wood. But yeah, until then, we'll see you next time.
See you later, guys.